My name is Pet Harlan, and I learned long ago that silence can be a cage you build with your own hands, but it was Harlan Whitaker, a man of 60 with eyes like weathered oak and a voice that carried the weight of too many winters, who taught me how to pick the lock. I was 45 when I met him, though it feels like yesterday and a lifetime ago all at once, back when my husband Thomas was still alive, back when I believed love meant swallowing every bitter pill and smiling through the burn. Thomas died in '95, a heart attack that came sudden as a thunderclap, leaving me with 2 children, Clara, 19, sharp-tongued and ambitious, and Benjamin, 17, quiet and already pulling away, and a house in a small town called Willow Creek, where the air smelled of pine and regret. I was a seamstress then, working from home, my fingers pricked raw from mending neighbors' clothes for pennies, my dreams of opening a dress shop buried under bills and grief. Harlan came into my life like a storm cloud, unexpected and heavy with promise, a widower who'd lost his wife to cancer and carried his sorrow in the lines around his eyes. He was a carpenter, 60 years old, his hands calloused from years of shaping wood into something beautiful, and he fixed the sagging porch on our old Victorian house for half the price anyone else quoted, saying he liked the look of the place, liked the way it stood proud despite its cracks. I didn't trust him at first. Trust was a luxury I couldn't afford after Thomas left me with a mortgage and a pension that barely covered the electric bill. But Harlan had a way of lingering, offering to patch the roof, then the fence, then the creaky stairs, each job done with a quiet care that made my chest ache in a way I hadn't felt since Thomas was young and still looked at me like I was the sun. It started with coffee, Harlan bringing a thermos to the porch after a day's work, the two of us sitting on the steps as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in bruised purples and golds. He talked about his wife, Ellen, how she loved gardens and hated the cold, how he still planted tulips every spring because it felt like keeping her alive. I talked about Thomas, how he'd promised we'd travel one day, see the ocean, maybe even Paris, but died before we could save enough for a single trip. Harlan listened, really listened, his eyes never leaving mine, and for the first time in years, I felt seen, not as a widow or a mother or a seamstress scraping by, but as Pet, a woman with a heart still beating despite the cracks. Clara didn't like him. She'd come home from her community college classes, her hair dyed a new color every month, and scowl at Harlan's truck in the driveway, muttering about old men sniffing around. Benjamin was quieter, just watched from the kitchen window, his silence heavier than Clara's barbs. I told myself they were grieving, that they'd come around, that a mother's job was to endure, to keep the family stitched together no matter how frayed the threads. Harlan and I grew closer, our coffee talks turning to dinners, his rough hands brushing mine as we passed the salt, his laugh low and warm like a fire on a winter night. He was 60, 15 years older than me, but age felt irrelevant when he looked at me like I was whole, not a broken thing held together by duty. By the time I was 46, we were in love, or what I thought was love, the kind that made me forget the bills piling up, the way Clara's eyes hardened when she looked at me, the way Benjamin stopped calling me mom and just said you like I was a stranger. Harlan proposed on a crisp October evening, under the maple tree in our backyard, its leaves a blaze of red and orange. He didn't have a ring, just a small wooden box he'd carved himself, intricate swirls that told a story I couldn't yet read. Pet, he said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands, I don't have much, but I have this heart, and it's yours if you'll take it. I cried, not from joy but from a relief I couldn't name, the feeling of being wanted after years of being needed only for what I could give. I said yes, and for a moment, I believed I could start again, that Harlan's steady presence could mend the holes Thomas left, the ones my children kept widening. Clara laughed when I told her, a sharp, bitter sound. You're replacing Dad with some old carpenter, she spat, her eyes flashing with something darker than grief. Benjamin didn't speak, just stared at the floor, his jaw tight. I swallowed their anger, told myself they were young, that they'd understand one day, that a good mother forgives, endures, keeps quiet. The wedding was small, just us and a few neighbors at the town hall, Harlan in a suit that strained at the shoulders, me in a dress I'd sewn myself, simple but elegant, the first thing I'd made for me in years. Harlan moved into our house, bringing his tools and a trunk of Ellen's things, photos, a quilt, a locket he kept on the nightstand. He fixed things, not just the house but me, or so I thought, his hands gentle when they held mine, his voice soft when he said I was enough. But the children didn't warm to him, and the house, once loud with their arguments and laughter, grew quiet, a silence that pressed against my ribs like a bruise. Clara moved out first, at 20, taking a job in the city 2 hours away, saying she needed space, needed to breathe. She left without a goodbye, just a note on the kitchen table, I can't watch you pretend this is a family. Benjamin followed a year later, at 18, enrolling in a trade school across the state, his calls rare and clipped, his visits non-existent. I told myself it was normal, that children grow up and leave, that I'd done my part, raised them, sacrificed for them, sold my mother's jewelry to pay for Clara's books, worked double shifts when Benjamin needed braces. Harlan was my anchor, or so I believed, his presence a balm against the emptiness of the house. He worked less as he got older, his hands stiffer, his back aching, but he still carved, still fixed things, still looked at me like I was a treasure. But there were signs, small ones I ignored, the way he'd linger over the bank statements, the way he'd hush me when I asked about the savings Thomas left, a modest sum meant to keep me safe. I was 48 when I found the first lie, a letter from the bank tucked in Harlan's toolbox, addressed to him, mentioning an account I'd never seen. I confronted him, my voice trembling, the first time I'd raised it in years. "What is this, Harlan?" He looked at me, those oak eyes clouded, and said it was nothing, just a mistake, that he was handling things to protect me. I wanted to believe him, so I did, swallowing the doubt like I'd swallowed Clara's anger, Benjamin's silence, the endless bills that never seemed to shrink. The truth came slow, like a wound festering under a bandage. Harlan was 62 when I noticed the money running out faster than it should, the grocery budget tighter, the mortgage payments late. I was 50 now, my hands aching from sewing, my eyes straining under the dim light of my work table. I asked Harlan again, this time firmer, my voice cracking like thin ice. He sighed, heavy, and sat me down at the kitchen table, the same table where Clara left her note, where Benjamin used to do his homework. "Pet," he said, "I made some investments. Bad ones. I was trying to build something for us, for the kids if they came back." My heart sank, but I clung to hope, to the man who'd carved that wooden box, who'd held me when I cried for Thomas. "What investments?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He showed me papers, accounts in his name, money moved from Thomas's savings, from the pension, from the emergency fund I thought was untouched. Thousands gone, funneled into a business venture with a friend, a workshop they'd planned to open, a dream that collapsed when the friend ran off with the cash. Harlan swore he'd fix it, that he'd work longer, carve more, sell his tools if he had to. I believed him, or tried to, because what else could I do? I was Pet, the woman who endured, who kept quiet, who stitched her life together with threadbare hope. The children came back, but not for me. Clara, now 23, showed up with a man in a suit, her hair sleek and professional, her eyes cold. Benjamin, 21, trailed behind, his face gaunt, his silence heavier than ever. They sat in the living room, Harlan in his chair, me on the couch, my hands folded tight to stop the trembling. Clara spoke first, her voice like a blade. "We know about the money, Mom. Harlan's been spending it." I looked at Harlan, 63 now, his face pale, his hands gripping the armrests. "It's not like that," he said, but his voice cracked, and I saw it then, the flicker of guilt in his eyes. Benjamin spoke, his first words in months, "We checked the accounts. He moved everything." My world tilted, the room spinning like I'd stood up too fast. I'd sold my wedding ring for Clara's college, taken night shifts for Benjamin's school, and Harlan, the man I'd married, the man I'd loved, had taken what little Thomas left me. I asked, my voice shaking, "How much?" Clara handed me a bank statement, numbers in red, the savings account nearly empty, the pension rerouted to Harlan's workshop, to debts I didn't know we had. I stared at the paper, the numbers blurring through tears, and felt something break inside me, not soft but sharp, like glass shattering in slow motion. Harlan tried to explain, his voice pleading, saying he'd meant to make us secure, to give me the dress shop I'd dreamed of, to bring the kids back with a better life. But the words were hollow, each one a lie I'd swallowed for years. Clara and Benjamin wanted him gone, wanted the house sold, wanted me to start over. I looked at them, my children, their faces hard with anger, and saw strangers. They hadn't come for me, they'd come for the money, or what was left of it, their grief for their father twisted into greed. I told them to leave, my voice steady for the first time in years, and they did, Clara's heels clicking like gunshots, Benjamin's silence louder than any scream. Harlan stayed, begging, his oak eyes wet with tears, but I couldn't look at him. I was 51, alone in a house that felt like a tomb, the walls echoing with every sacrifice I'd made, every dream I'd buried. I didn't cry that night, I sat at the kitchen table, the bank statement in front of me, and felt the weight of every silence I'd kept, every pill I'd swallowed. Harlan moved out a week later, taking his tools, his trunk, his locket, leaving the house quieter than it had ever been. I didn't fight for him, didn't beg him to stay. I was done swallowing. The years that followed were hard, harder than I'd imagined. I was 52 when I moved to the Heights, a crumbling apartment complex 2 towns over, my sewing machine and a suitcase all I could afford after selling the house to cover Harlan's debts. Clara and Benjamin didn't help, they'd gotten what they wanted, a cut of the sale, and vanished again, Clara to her city life, Benjamin to his trade school, their calls rare, their visits non-existent. I worked odd jobs, cleaning offices, mending clothes for neighbors, my pension a pittance that barely covered rent. The Heights was gray, the walls thin, the pipes leaking, but it was mine, paid for with my own hands. I met Delilah there, in apartment 203, a widow like me, her eyes tired but kind, her voice soft from years of silence. We drank tea, shared stories, and I saw myself in her, the way she apologized for existing, the way she thanked her son for crumbs. I told her about Harlan, about the children, about the night I stopped swallowing, and she listened, her hands wrapped around her mug like it was a lifeline. I was 60 now, my hair gray, my hands spotted, but stronger than I'd ever been, my voice no longer a whisper but a steady thread weaving through the chaos. Harlan found me again when I was 61, a chance meeting at the Willow Creek Farmers Market, his hair whiter, his back stooped, his eyes still carrying that weight. He was 69, living alone in a small cabin, carving again, selling his work at the market. "Pet," he said, his voice cracking, "I never stopped loving you." I wanted to hate him, to spit out the bitterness I'd carried for years, but I felt only pity, a dull ache for the man he'd been, the man I thought he was. He told me about his regrets, how the workshop failed, how he'd lost everything trying to chase a dream that wasn't mine. He'd kept the locket, Ellen's locket, and showed it to me, the silver worn smooth. I was wrong, he said, I took what wasn't mine. I didn't forgive him, not then, but I didn't turn away either. We met for coffee sometimes, not like before, not with love, but with a quiet understanding, 2 old people carrying the weight of their mistakes. Clara and Benjamin never came back, their lives built on the scraps of my sacrifice, their silence louder than any apology. I saw them once, Clara in a magazine, a lawyer now, Benjamin in a blurry photo at a trade show, their faces older but still cold. I didn't reach out, I'd learned to stop swallowing their absence. Delilah's story unfolded years later, when I was 70, my apartment next to hers, our tea sessions a ritual. Her son Reggie's betrayal echoed Harlan's, the trust fund stolen, the lies piled high. I told her what I'd learned, what Harlan's betrayal carved into me. You don't get a medal for suffering in silence, Delilah. Sometimes you have to spit out what's poisoning you. She listened, her eyes wide, and when her birthday came, when Vivian exposed the truth, I wasn't surprised. I'd seen it before, in my own mirror, in Harlan's eyes, in my children's greed. I helped Delilah get ready that night, lent her my shawl, styled her hair, told her she was worth more than she knew. If anything feels off tonight, I warned, don't stay quiet. She laughed, nervous, but I saw the spark, the same one I'd found at 51 when I told Harlan to leave. Harlan died last year, at 75, a quiet passing in his cabin, a letter arriving weeks later, his handwriting shaky. "Pet, I'm sorry, I hope you found peace, the locket is yours if you want it." I didn't want it, but I kept the letter, a reminder of the man who broke me and, in breaking me, taught me to stand. Now, at 71, I drink tea with Delilah, watch her paint on her balcony, see her voice grow stronger, her eyes brighter. I tell her about Harlan, about the night I stopped swallowing, about the children who took and never gave back. She tells me about Reggie, about the trust fund, about the courtroom where she found her strength. We laugh sometimes, bitter but real, and we cry too, for the years lost, for the love that hurt more than it healed. The Heights is still gray, still crumbling, but it's home, our home, where 2 widows learned to stop being invisible. Harlan's locket sits in a drawer, unopened, a relic of a life I left behind. I don't need it, I have Delilah, her paintings, our tea, our truth. I learned to spit out the poison, to speak even when my voice shook, to live for me after a lifetime of living for others. And when I see Delilah stand tall, her shadow stretching across her balcony like it has weight, I know I helped her find the key to her cage, just as Harlan, in his betrayal, gave me mine. The moral of this image is that true confidence and peace come from a life well lived, not from youth or material success. The 60-year-old man's calm expression and warm surroundings reflect the quiet dignity that comes with age, experience, and self-acceptance. His environment, simple, cozy, and full of personal touches, reminds us that fulfillment is found in appreciating the small, meaningful moments that make up our days. It teaches that wisdom is not loud or showy, it's the gentle strength that comes from knowing who you are and being at peace with it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, it really helps. Watch the full video for more details.